Hello and welcome to WVU Medicine Tuesday Talks. I'm your host, Mary Ravazio Menard. Are you one of the thousands who made a New Year's resolution to exercise more or start a fitness program? How do you design a fitness program and stick with it? Are you ever too old to start a fitness program? We're going to answer those questions and more as we're talking with Dr. A.J. Monseau of the WVU Medicine Sports Medicine Department. Welcome, Dr. Monseau, to Tuesday Talks.
Thank you.
Good to have you. We encourage you to post any fitness program questions you may have in the comments section below, and we'll try to answer them live. Okay, well, it's that time of year. The gyms are really crowded. Everybody's turning a new page. So let's start first by talking about exercise and its many health benefits, because there's a lot.
Absolutely. Most people, when they start to think about exercise, really focus on weight loss. And it's a bit of a shame because there are so many other benefits from exercise, not only physical but mental and mood, helping with depression and anxiety and all those things. But specifically, cardiovascular health, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and then the prevention of all those things as well. And there's even some evidence that exercise can help prevent or lower mortality from several different cancers as well.
Wow. So there's a lot of good benefits to that.
Absolutely.
Are you ever too old or too young to start an exercise program?
No, I think there are ways to exercise for all ages. I think, there's different benefits for different age groups clearly, and there are some exercises that might be a little aggressive for some age groups, but I think that there's something to be said for a good, solid, low-impact exercise program for every age.
Okay. Now, but is it ever too old? That's the one I'm interested in.
No. Again, I think if you can manage an exercise program to be realistic, to be something that is not painful, it should be something that's helping you feel better, then no, I don't think there's any age that's too old.
Okay. So where do we start if we want to safely start an exercise program?
Yes, as with anything, you want to start slow. You want to start with low exercise as far as low intensity, but then you can build on that. So for many people, that's just walking. Getting out and going for a walk. I think unfortunately, we hit some cold snaps in our area clearly, but we also have some warm times as well, and even times of day or finding an area where you can go and walk, whether it be at the mall or whatever, to get out there and be able to just do some exercise in that way is the good start. So just kind of having a mentality that you want to get active, you want to get your body moving, you want to move more than you sit. That's kind of a general theme. So we want to find ways to help people do that.
Okay, but then how do we plan something that we're going to stick with? Because I know we all have the best of intentions on January 1st, and then just kind of peters off. How do we stick with it?
Well, we need realistic goals, and we need to attack this kind of intentionally. So we need to look at where we want to go, but understand that may take us a while to get there. But if it's something as easy as I would like to walk 3 times a week, that should be relatively doable. Sometimes that takes some planning. Sometimes that means that you got to look at your schedule and figure out, hey, I know these days are bad, whether I got to pick up my kids or I got to do this or that or whatever it is for work, but I have a couple of other days where I can make time to do that. And when you're taking care of yourself and trying to find time to do that, I think it's a realistic goal. And again, that's where it really comes down to, starting with a realistic, attainable goal and accomplishing that, and then kind of moving on and kind of starting to move the goalposts a little further back.
So should it be a concrete goal, like something you write down, or should it be it's just I want to move more? Is that too broad of a goal?
Yeah, I think we're getting into the psychology of it now, right? I mean,
yeah.
That's where there are definitely some people who will they need to write it down, and they're gonna find most success. I would say most people are probably in that category. If it's something you really want to attain, to sit and write it down. Come up with a plan is probably the best way to do that for the majority of people. Some people feel a little too boxed in by some things like that.
Yeah.
And then we have the very kind of lucky people who can just kind of say it once inside their heads and go and make it happen. But most people aren't that way.
People?
Exactly. Most people are not that way. So, just trying to be realistic. Again, when you set really high goals, many of us do, right? You set a very high goal, but at the same time, there are small goals that will get you there. And so if you can kind of lay those out as far as how much you want to do. What we'd like to see is, you start to talk about times of it for exercise and intensity. So the goal for adults is 150 minutes of moderate physical activity every week. So
150.
150.
150. Okay.
So that's that could be 5 times a week at 30 minutes or 3 times a week at 50 minutes. That should be our goal for kind of like the base. Now, for people who are in good health and can attack more of a vigorous activity level, then the minutes come down. So you don't have to work out as long. If you're going to do something a lot more physically straining, then 75 minutes is our goal for vigorous activity. And you can combine those, but clearly that's more of a down the road goal for a lot of people. When you're just starting out, if you try to go right to that, you're going to injure yourself, you're going to fizzle out, it's going to be too much too soon. So you have to kind of build up to that.
And what's considered vigorous activity?
So it really
Where's
looks
the
at,
line?
kind of your heart rate is how that's really judged based off of your age and kind of a maximum heart rate or goal heart rate. What I try to tell people is moderate activity is probably, you get your heart rate up a little bit, most people break a little sweat. That's what I would consider moderate physical activity. The ones who go to vigorous activity, you add in a third component, which is you get really winded. So for those who go heart rate up, breaking a sweat, and you're getting winded, now you're pushing into that vigorous activity level. That's just kind of a layman's way to look at it.
You shouldn't be able to talk, right? If it's vigorous, or you should be able to talk.
You can, many times you can talk. We're not talking about pushing to full exhaustion where you really can't talk. We're talking about pushing into vigorous. So you may still be able to talk. You may not be able to talk in a full conversation with your friend who's exercising with you, which is another thing to mention is that, clearly there's benefits to having an exercise buddy. So, having that person who's going to go through it with you and exercise with you and also hold you accountable to these goals that you guys set.
Helps you both hold each other accountable.
Exactly.
And stay motivated.
Exactly.
Should there be some variety in our exercise plan?
Absolutely. So, historically, when most people think about exercise, especially for weight loss, they think about cardiovascular, aerobic exercise, jogging, biking, things like that. Unfortunately, for a lot of people, it's just those are not exercises they enjoy. Yeah. And so finding something that you enjoy is the best way to make an exercise program stick. If there's something you like to do or some place you like to go and if there's people you like to hang out with and you want to go and do that, that's going to be when you have your most success. Most people need a variety. Most people, if it's just one exercise. Now, obviously, again, there are people, and I know there are friends of mine they're runners, and if they're not running, they'd rather not be exercising. That's all they want to do. But most people are not that way. Most people like a variety. And, as far as the activity goes, it doesn't have to be jogging or biking or things like that when we're talking about the physical activity minutes. It can be resistance training. It can be light, kind of weight training. It can be high intensity interval training, so the HIIT workouts. And there's lots of different options for those type of things. There's great resources all over YouTube and the internet to find different workouts and be able to give yourself a variety of things in that way.
Do we necessarily have to check with our doctor before starting a program? Or is that like an age-related thing?
Somewhat age, somewhat medical problems. So clearly that, if you have a history of cardiovascular disease, heart disease, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, while we do believe exercise will be helpful, it's best to start with your doctor and discuss whether, exercise is right for you at this time, how much exercise might be right for you. Many primary care physicians and those of us at the Sports Medicine Center may write what we call an exercise prescription, where we kind of lay out exactly, kind of what you should be looking at now, where you're at with your health and what you can handle versus, clearly where you want to go and looking at a program that kind of builds on that initial step to get you where you want to go.
Wow, okay. You were mentioning earlier about the 150 minutes a week. Do you have to do that like in, 3 times a week for, I'm going to do math here, whatever the math is. Or, can you break it up during the day, 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there? Is that just as effective, or is that just not work?
Well, the first thing is that any exercise is better than no exercise.
Okay.
So doing 10 minutes here and there is better than doing nothing.
Okay.
And doing 10 minutes a week is better than doing no minutes a week. So again, we don't want to get intimidated by the 150 minutes.
Right.
Because for a lot of people, that will shut them down. As soon as they fail at that a couple of weeks, they'll hang it up. But any exercise is better than none. We said moving is better than sitting, so we want to kind of get that mindset going. And then when it comes to breaking it down, we would like to see 20 minutes be a minimum when you're looking at a workout or looking at an exercise time period.
Okay.
20 minutes is good. For a lot of people, they get an hour for lunch.
Yeah.
20 minutes on a lunch break is something that's attainable for a lot of people. It still gives you, 30, 40 minutes by the time you're doing to do that. But to go for a walk on your lunch break for a part of it and then eat for the other may be something that's really attainable for a lot of people. And it comes down to the mix of aerobic stuff versus resistance. It's your preference. There are clearly benefits for more exercise than that. Right, and we haven't gone into the injury side of it yet, but
we will.
We will. So there's benefits to more, but this is what we want to look at as a minimum. This is what we want to see as our eventual goal once we kind of work through the kind of easing in process that happens at the beginning of an exercise routine.
All right, so let's talk about injuries.
Yeah.
What if you overdo it and you get injured and you're like, how do you?
So let's talk prevention first.
Okay.
Right? So because we would love to prevent these before they ever happen. So having a good warm-up period. So if you are going to venture into the more moderate and then vigorous exercise levels, you need a good warm-up period. That may only be 3 to 5 minutes of a lower level of physical activity before you start to kind of push it. And you'd like to see a cool-down period at the end, just to mirror that, so that you're kind of bringing it back down so you don't have to go straight from vigorous activity to nothing. And sometimes that can be a little difficult on your body afterwards.
Okay.
We want to take it slow, as we talked about, kind of building up. And then the other thing is the variety that we talked about is great for preventing injuries. Because when you're doing just one activity, and that's all you do, then overuse injuries are much more common.
Okay.
If you can at least mix in some other exercises, then overuse injuries are not nearly as common. They're not nearly as big of a deal. There are going to be injuries. There are going to be things that happen, whether it's a misstep here or whatever it is, a lift one day that you weren't quite prepared for. So there are going to be acute injuries along the way. But if we can eliminate more of the overuse injuries, the acute injuries are generally more easily treated. Overuse injuries get a little more difficult. Right? When we see a runner who, that is their main form of exercise. They love to run. Their whole life revolves around it. Which, trust me, I know those people, and I love them. Some of them are my family members. Mm-hmm. They venture into an overuse injury with, say, a stress fracture in their leg, and now all of a sudden they go from running to us having to tell them you actually need to take a significant amount of time off,
and
that's a fall that they don't want to go through. So we really want to push them to say, listen, like if you can mix in some other exercises, some biking, some swimming, some resistance training to bring down your miles, then it's going to prevent some of these overuse things. And each exercise has those overuse things, whatever it may be. If you do nothing but lift weights and you're not doing a good job of taking care of your body, and really pushing it, then you may end up with back strains and different things as well. So we just want to see a nice variety, something that's attainable, and then kind of go from there.
What about stretching? What role does stretching play? Because, you were talking about warming up before and cooling down after. Are you supposed to stretch before or after or both?
Yep. So, I think when I look at stretching, I look as another form of activity, honestly. And for some stretching programs, they can definitely push you into the moderate physical activity range. And so that would count as minutes to do a dedicated stretching routine. And there's lots of those out there and things that are easily findable. So stretching is typically done before. And again, there's lots of different schools of thought on called static stretching, where you just stand there and kind of stretch the muscle, versus dynamic stretching, where you're doing more of what people consider a warm-up period than almost stretching. but incorporating some stretching into it. It can definitely feel good. As far as injury prevention, the data on stretching is probably a little more gray than what we used to think. But it definitely feels good. It's a good way to get your body going. It's a good warm-up period for sure. So I think those things are good when it comes to stretching. You'll definitely find people out there who say, I have to stretch. Like if I don't stretch, I will get hurt. No question, or I'll be feeling it for days if I don't stretch. And then you'll find other people who say they never stretch. And they I don't understand how this works. We get people on both sides of this coin. But it is what it is. So we want to push people, though, again, get your physical activity up, find exercises you like, and that's going to be your best bet.
So it sounds like the warm-up and the cool-down are more important to prevention of injuries than stretching.
Yeah, and I think it comes down to soreness as well, and so just trying to kind of keep those those muscles healthy and away from injury is a good warm up and cool down period.
Okay, so how can we build activity into our daily routine?
Yeah.
You were talking before about the lunch hour.
Yeah, I think lunch hour is a place where I know a lot of people incorporate that. I think it's a really good way to do that. Taking the stairs is another one. Parking a little farther away is another one. These are common things that are intuitive, and I know we probably hear this every year around this time.
Yep.
But it's good to be reminded, and I think those are easy ways to do that. If it's just something that's becomes a habit for you, a pattern that you just always do, you don't even think twice about it. So parking a little farther away, where it's a 5-minute walk to get into work instead of a 2-minute walk to get into work, and there you go. You've got yourself 10 minutes now from morning and afternoon. And as we said, any physical activity is better than no physical activity.
Okay. So it's January 10th. Maybe people are still with it.
Yeah.
But what's the key? How do we stay motivated beyond January 10th?
Again, it really comes down to attainable goals, short-term attainable goals that you can kind of see. Having that exercise buddy or somebody's going to help hold you accountable and make it fun. Finding an activity that you enjoy, and then having variety as well. I think those are the kind of hallmarks of how you're going to find success and stick with it.
Okay. And I always ask this at the end. What's the most important thing? We've been talking about this for a little bit. What's the most important thing you want people to know or remember about starting a fitness program that you can safely do and stick with?
Yeah. If you have, I guess, a couple of things. If you have medical problems, you definitely want to see your doctor first. Mm-hmm. And then the same thing as we've been harping on, if you remember nothing else, it's that any physical activity is better than no physical activity. And then just to kind of build on that.
Be gentle with yourself,
Absolutely.
right? Don't beat yourself up when you fail
this is not a
sometimes.
no pain, no gain, especially for people who are just starting out. If you push yourself too much, you try to say, hey, I'm going to relive my glory days or high school or whatever I did back in the day, you're going to end up getting hurt, and then you're going to be laid up for months, and then your activity level clearly won't be as what you want it to be.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much. This was a lot of good information. We're going to start it and stick with it. I appreciate your time, and the information was great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Well, that brings us to the end of this edition of Tuesday Talks. If you're looking for more information about sports medicine, visit wvumedicine.org/sportsmed. And join us next time on Tuesday Talks on January 31st, when we'll talk about pain management with Dr. Richard Vaglienti of the WVU Medicine Center for Integrative Pain Management. I'm Mary Ravazio Menard, and on behalf of Dr. Monseau and everyone at WVU Medicine, thanks for joining us and have a great day.